So I just want to do a little sketch to sort of let's visualize this before we get into the details of talking about it. So I sort of just did that in reverse with the other one. We sort of visualized it second. So let's imagine there's a horizon line. And vanishing points. And we want to do this grid or this hashtag. And I want to just emphasize that this is the piece of paper. You know, and it's quite small compared to the placement you need for the vanishing points and the horizon line. You may have to tape an entire another sheet of newsprint, you know, to your paper in order to set yourself up for an actual ability to draw this. Does that make sense? So within, you know, this whole space, though, what you're really trying to do is, and I should put the ruler this way so you can see. You're trying to make something that is going to be a grid. Right? And it would go the other way as well. So that's sort of the form that's being created, right? But I'm not getting smaller as I go back. And that's the other part of what, you know, you sort of want to be thinking about, whether it is in a technical way, which I can show you, or just in a way where, you know, yes, I understand it needs to be getting smaller each time. So but understanding this, you know, that this is kind of what we're creating is, I think, the first step. So if I have, so I'm going to draw it a little more simply now, but that's sort of the larger space. How am I doing on time? I've got time for this. Okay. So, and Caitlin, this isn't exactly the same as drawing a box, but I definitely think you should be watching this. I think it is relevant to what you're doing. So I want to sort of plot out where I might put these, you know, and like you called it a hashtag, which makes me feel like there could just be maybe 2 of them. You know what I mean? I'm going to do a third one just for, I don't know, because I think it's important. Okay, so if I'm trying to create this kind of space, whether it's getting smaller proportionally or not, and it's really not at the moment, I need to it's a little tricky because typically when we start a 2-point perspective shape, we're used to starting it with the front edge, you know, and then working back from there. In this case, it's almost like I'm starting out by plotting the top side of it. So let's just start as if these were pieces of lumber. You know, each one was a piece of lumber and it was going back in space. And I'm going to draw them kind of individually in that way. So let's take this first line and let's go back to thinking of it as really a shape that starts with just a front edge. So I'm going to draw that back in perspective. Why did I do that? Oh, that's okay. But I only want it to be this wide, right? I only want it to be, you know, this one little piece. So I could go all the way back, but you know, this is the narrow sort of beam that I'm looking to create. Okay, so I've got this thing with 3 sides. Then, and if I want to end it, you know, back here, I can do a vertical to end it on this side, but on the top, I have to go back to the vanishing point, and I may need a longer ruler to help me do this. Okay, so there's one. Let's do one crossing the other way. Here's my front edge. Here's a line going back to the vanishing point, and this, oh, that was wrong, see? But you can do it. There's nothing really wrong with it, but I only need it to be, you know, very short. Okay, so going back there. I already drew this line going to the vanishing point, but I need to draw this one. So that's going to show the length of it. I want to show how deep this is going to be. It's not going to be that deep. It's just a beam, you know, piece of lumber. They're going to intersect, so I actually need to sort of show, it's almost like that back corner of a box, right? If I could see through it. These are going to come together and join up as if they were one object. Can you see why I'm erasing these lines, but not this line? Because it's going on top. If I want to end this back here somewhere, I can do a vertical line to terminate it, you know, vertically on the side, but I've got to go back to the vanishing point to show the end of it back here. You know, the hashtag, it would have the same height, right? Like I could have these be longer or shorter, but if I want to stay uniform, then my next line, let me start it on the same, that same track. Do you know what I mean? So I want it to be this wide. I want to go back to the opposite vanishing points. Already drew that one. If I want it to be the same length as this one, I would need to have drawn this line all the way back to the vanishing point, so I have this kind of guideline the whole way back, but it's going to end right there. You guys see that? Where it intersects here, again, I'm looking for that edge for the two of them to meet. I'm looking for the places where I'm going to be erasing marks all across the top in both directions. Okay. If I want to come over here and keep uniform with this one, I should remember how I said, oh no, I did that wrong. I shouldn't have drawn the line all the way back. Well, I could draw the line all the way back. If I want this to be, you know, my guideline for where the next one starts, I could start it here or here. It really doesn't matter. You know, it's just about getting a width or getting a rough placement. So I just need vertical lines to explain that. Then I need my lines to go back to the vanishing point. What do you think about that, Bailey?
That's very helpful. Thank you. I totally get it now.
Okay. Caitlin, do you see how this might apply to what you're doing?
Yeah.
And how each of your boxes has to basically have a, a four-sided, even if you don't draw all four sides, you need to be seeing that. So when if you then are going to build up, your box is basically this, but it comes up, it elevates from the ground. So let me just draw one. I'm going to keep, do I have time? I have just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to keep drawing, but if anybody else has questions, go ahead and ask them. But I'd like to just draw one more little shape for you, Caitlin. And we can continue with it next time if we run out of time. Does anybody else have other questions right now?
I have questions about like not like typical shapes, like just the odd shapes. Like, should we? I mean, can we do non like? Yeah, I don't know what the word for it is, but like just
organic shapes.
Yeah.
As long as they are based off of a box.
Yeah.
So if you build them from a box, sure.
So for like the cloud, like you kind of made that shape for the cloud. I kind of used that as a reference.
Yeah.
And made it like a trapezoidal shape.
Well, no, I made it a box.
Well, yeah. Well, you started with a box, didn't you? And then didn't it have a angle on it?
No. I changed horizon lines so it had different angles than it originally had, but I didn't draw it in a. I didn't draw it like as an abstract form. Does that?
Yeah.
I never intentionally went off of linear perspective, like abandoned linear perspective, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no. Yeah. I guess what like I would like to do an abstract form for the cloud, but I don't think I'm pulling it off. So I'll show you next class.
Let's look at it. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it, and I'll show you next class, and I'll do another step.
And guys, I did open up a progress folder, so my request would be that anything you're working on, whether it's going good or bad, if you would put it in there, then I could spend some time looking at it and drawing it for you next time. So please submit whatever you do, good, bad, and ugly, and show that you've been working on it and let me help you with it. You guys can go whenever you want, and I'll see you next time. What I'm doing right now is sort of finishing or trying to, finish this box. Or another way, I guess I could say this, elevate, change the elevation of this so that it comes up. And I'm thinking about it as like a three-dimensional box. So like if this one is just flat, this one is going to come up and be, a whole box. This inside corner is not the boundary of the box. It's actually this outside corner. And if we could see through, it would be a point down in here, right? But this is actually the top outermost point. See how that vertical line doesn't line up? That doesn't matter. This was just a line I drew that I didn't know how long it was supposed to be, so it really isn't meaningful at all. It would really be a point that corresponded with this outside corner. Do you see how that's outside, outside? This kind of got mixed up a little bit. Outside here. So ideally, you know, minus any human error, that's what would line up there. And actually, that's not too bad. Then I've got this top, I'm going to call it a ring, but you know, this top almost border. And then the width here would be this point. And then that is hard to see where it intersects, but it's basically these 2 points would join up. These points would join up that you can't see on the outside. And this point we haven't given, the way this has a width to it, this doesn't have a width to it yet. So I'm going to just choose one. I know time's up on class, guys, but I'm recording the demo and I want to have a finished demo to post for you guys. The corner here, all 4 of these corners, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a possibility in every instance that that is going to be seen. So it's really the best thing you can do is draw all 4 of those edges. This one would be invisible. Hopefully you can understand why. You know, and line variation is what's going to ultimately help us see, you know, separate out all these planning lines from what's right and what's really happening. This edge I erased, but I'm going to add it back in because instead of it being this long plane, it's going to turn and go up. I'll erase some of these lines. And here I drew a whole lot of stuff that we really aren't going to be able to see. But it was important stuff. It was all stuff that had to be drawn to get to the answers we got to. And I'm darkening. In some cases I'm adding back in these lines. In some cases I'm erasing it, because now it needs to be covered up. I know I never quite got that line in the first place. Here's something that's missing, and I'm not sure if you can tell, but you know how I mentioned all 4 corners, you know, these 4 corners that had to be drawn. Well, in here, this corner, the vertical line was never drawn for that, you know, from this corner to that corner. And that was an important line. Without that line right there, you would not see, you would only see the outside, you wouldn't see the inside part of this plane. Here's some things we also haven't drawn. This goes up here, but at some point it ends and it turns this way. The only way we would know where that ends is if we're drawing a line from that corner back to the vanishing point. And from that corner back to the vanishing point. That's showing these lines, but on the inside, you know, back side. So I hope it's not too confusing, but I'm going to try to keep erasing the lines that aren't helping. You know, that line we would not see, but it's still important to draw because we ought to be seeing, you see how this is the front corner of this back little rectangle? I know it's really hard to see, but you know, that's where these angles come together. Coming down from there and down from there shows us that plane. Now we can talk about shading it another time, and I'd be happy to do that. But as far as drawing it, now we have, you know, all the various sides. That looks a little funny. Erase the wrong line there. You know, now we have the different sides that we should be seeing on each object. Okay. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for you guys who stuck around. Are we
Thank
all
you.
good?